All righty. Well, welcome back to another episode of Money Buddy. Oh, so excited to be back, and especially with today's topic. So, Leanne and I are going to do something of a review of a video that I found, a podcast episode from earlier this week. And I got like 12 minutes into it and had to gush and send a big old message to Leanne, like, you've got to watch this. It is called Healing Your Relationship to Money with Kate Northrup. And I would highly recommend, like, if you want to be most up to speed with this conversation that Leanne and I are about to have, that maybe you even pause this and go watch like the first 15 to 20 minutes of that Kate Northrup podcast interview, because what we're going to be talking about are the some of the tips and the practical practices that we can incorporate into our own focus on money to heal our relationship. She gives very practical advice, and one especially that I cannot wait to get into. So that will be the focus of the rest of this episode. Feel free to come back after you've watched that. Really, the whole episode is very good, but the three steps that she offers are in those first like 15 to 20 minutes. So now, assuming that everybody's perfectly up to speed, and kudos to those of you that are like, I'll power through, I think I'll be okay. Leanne and I will do our very best to explain the practices, but we're both very excited about what she offered and how well she offered it. So, you'll get what you get, but maybe that's always the case. So, yeah. Leanne, you've watched the video more recently. Why don't you start us off with like some general reflections of what it was like to listen to even the first 20 minutes of that video?
Honestly, I will say that it was overwhelming. So the three steps that she's offered, that Kate offers, are like fascinating to me. And the first one is the one that I know we have put a lot of our conversation into because it's overwhelming. And
In
that
a
is
good
the
way, but
concept
yes,
that,
yes.
yeah, that like you need to see the way that money flows. You need to be looking for it. And Kate gives the example of like energetic money flow being like a river, and a lot of people have their backs to it. They don't see that flow. But when you can learn to see this flow, you can put your toe into the water and you can actually like dive into it. And the money flow is the way that money exchanges hands in each component that gets worked. So like I was having trouble absorbing this concept because it was so big. Like Kate was talking about it as like you're going to a coffee shop and you open the coffee shop door, but like literally the first stop is the handle because now you're looking at the handle maker and they got paid, for providing this handle. And then who installed the handle? That person and their tools are part of the money system that got this installed. And who connected the handle maker with the door maker? Because now you've got this scenario where there's another person involved getting paid and they're getting some level of money flow from that. And then you've got the door itself, you've got the frame, you've got like it grows and it grows and it grows.
Yeah.
And so my struggle in like even hearing Kate like walk through it was like I am overwhelmed and my brain needs to just stop for a second. So as I was talking to Carly just before we started recording, I was like, I'm just kind of overwhelmed. I don't know like what to think about this. And Carly picked up a pen and she's like, this pen, right? And like immediately I'm thinking about it in terms of all of the components. And the word components, I think, just really changed the way that I saw the things. So all of a sudden, I'm thinking about a pen in terms of the number of components that it has. And
Yeah.
each of those components touched different hands. Money passed through all of those hands to get the components into this singular pen situation. All of the components had a manufacturing location. All of those manufacturing locations had people staffing them. All of those staff had maintenance and had instruments of their own, and each of those instruments had components, and each of those components got made elsewhere. And so the way that money is exchanging is in each of those component flows. So even thinking about it now, I was saying like I'm going to need to do some exercises with this, like make it a daily practice of picking up like the chapstick and saying this is the chapstick and this is where these pieces came from and those pieces don't like. Carly, you gave an excellent example if you want to go into your example of like the chapstick and the bees, because like that to me was just a Like
Well,
I was running with that.
yeah. Well, it's like, okay, so the chapstick has all the components, like what Leanne is saying. And if we just go to the chapstick itself, that's like on the inside, the chapstick is made of wax, and somebody harvested that wax out of the honeycomb, and somebody housed those bees, somebody purchased those bees and put them there. Somebody bought the little can that they use to like put smoke into the hive. Somebody sold the wax. Somebody, I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And I was like, yeah. And then I have this nail polish. And like again, you can go through it all of the different ways that money is changing hands. And that's what Kate is offering. And I think the original question that Emily asked was something along the lines of like, if you if you have somebody who is more in a scarcity mindset, in a lack-based mindset, like how do you close that gap? How do you get them to a place where they know that abundance is real and that they can personally tap into it? And basically the three steps that she's giving are her attempt at saying scarcity is fake, like scarcity isn't real. Lack isn't real. Like there's so much money in our world. And it's just a matter of like what Leanne offered, like what she said about, the river is flowing, but a lot of people are standing next to the river facing away from it, like with your back to it, and just not acknowledging how real all of this money flow is. And so, yeah, like you start thinking about, like, I have this pen and I have this chapstick and I have this journal, I have those sticky notes, I have this can of Fresca, I have this pot that my snake plant is sitting in. Like, you look around your room and you just start seeing, like, I am surrounded by money. It's not about like the number in your bank balance that like you look in this one little place and like that's where I can tell how abundant I am. You're surrounded. I don't care where you're sitting right now. You're surrounded by money. Every single person who's listening to this. It's wild.
It really is. Like I was looking at it in terms of like I'm sitting next to like a desktop computer and an elliptical, the amount of components that are sitting in there. Like, can you learn to see the world through the eyes of money flow?
Yeah.
And the learning aspect is going to be really difficult for me because it is an overwhelming thought process. But like the more you see how money is exchanging hands, and like I'm visualizing like literally just this elliptical sitting over here and like the money just like flying back and forth in between like all of the parts and pieces. Like
Yes.
it like there's so much more to the products that we surround ourselves with than we realize.
Yeah.
And can we tap into that movement and that energy? Because that's absolutely what I want to do. Like, I want to see this abundant river flowing at all times. Because
Yes.
when I can see it, it becomes easier to see my money in terms of an exchange. It becomes less heavy and less I need to have it, and more like it's running all over the place. And where do I want to grab it? Like, just I can pick it out of the air at that point because you just see it everywhere.
Yes. And that I think was like her point with that first one is something along the lines of like the more you see that this world is awash in money, you start to expect that. You start to see possibilities where before you weren't seeing them. Like you start to have ideas of like all the little ways that it's possible to take what you have to offer and get paid. Like it's easy. That's what she's saying. It's like making money is easy. It's just a matter of seeing how available it is. And I'm like, again, it is so incredible, like what you're saying, like almost overwhelming to sit here and try to do that level of like how much money traded hands for this chapstick to exist. And then consider that there are no less than like 1,000 items around me. And every single one of them had that many trading back and forth, on my journal. Somebody made like the gold that they have around the pages. Somebody made the pages. Somebody made the ink that makes the line on the pages. Somebody got paid to cut that tree out of the forest. Somebody made this cover. Somebody got paid to design the cover. Somebody got paid to like bind the book together. That book went in a box. Somebody made that box, like on and on and on. It is overwhelming. And then it's like abundance and money Like there's an overwhelming amount of money in this world. It's everywhere. It's everywhere you look.
And I think like what really strikes me is another thing Kate said. She's like, it's like having X-ray vision. And when you're looking at the body, you see all of the tendons moving, the blood flowing, the muscles
Mm.
contracting. You see all of the pieces moving when you have that kind of X-ray vision.
Yeah.
And can you apply that same X-ray vision as like to money flow? Can you see the
Yeah.
money flowing that way? And I think like the next step that there for me is like once you can see the money flowing, you can step into it because it's like a river. You can see someone's getting paid to design it. Do I want to step in there? You know,
Mhm.
you can see the little components here in the corner. Do I want to step in there?
Yeah.
Like you can see the movement of the money, and then you can determine which areas you actually want to be in and how you actually want to pull from that river.
Yeah.
Like I think that's probably what I'm taking away in this moment is the fact that I also have dogs here. So if they start barking or jumping up, like that's where we're at. But it just really strikes me that I'm deciding right now where I want to be stepping into the river and how I want to be serving this space. So like what is it that I want to offer and how like which revenue stream do I want to step into essentially? Like there
Mhm.
are millions of revenue streams out there. Like speaking to the components. So like
Yeah.
that just makes me think like, all right, again, from a component standpoint, where do I want to step in? What component really interests me? Like
Yeah.
how do I want to be a part of the money flow?
Yes.
So like that's there's room to grow there and I really want to be able to see it because the more I can see, the more I can like have fun with jumping in at other spaces. Being like, I never knew that this was even a revenue stream before. I want to be in this.
Totally. Like that's reminding me of one story that I heard on that Kathy Heller was talking about. She helps people start businesses. And this one client of hers started a business out of like what are all the little annoying tasks that are just so little and so low priority that you just never get to it. And the example she used was so relatable to me because I got that situation happening right now. Is like the screw is loose on your toilet seat. And so the toilet seat is like moving back and forth every time you sit on it. And like you never fix it. I've had that for like 3 fucking years. You never fix it because like life's not crumbling all around me. Okay. Like this is not that big a deal. But how many of those teeny little tasks do you have? And this woman, she comes into your life and she's like, write every single one of those on my list. And then she charges by the hour and she gets all of that stuff done. And so, like, how many ways are there to plug into the money flow, like what you're saying? And that scarcity mindset, that like lack-based mindset that probably the majority of people live in is like, you're not even looking at the raging river that does exist. And that just means like you're believing that like there's hardly any money in the world. There's hardly any ways to get paid when really there's infinite ways to get paid. And even just acknowledging that is a step along healing your relationship with money, acknowledging that money's everywhere, like believing in that wholeheartedly by practicing looking at, like, yeah, how many different people got paid just so this pen could be in my hand right now? A lot, a lot of people. Like, it feels so good. It feels so good to think like this.
It doesn't like it feels very much like being schooled. Like I'm getting schooled by the energy flow of money. Like
Mhm.
I need to learn how to see things. And it's not like the learning process by definition is uncomfortable. You're going from from an unknowing to a knowing. And like
Yeah.
you're transitioning into a new human being in that instant. So like learning is never a comfortable experience. Like sometimes it can be fun, but you are stepping outside of your zone of comfort in order to like experience this new thing. And so in this context thinking about the river of money like a school, it's like I need to learn how you flow because in the beginning like it's a bit more raging and it feels like out of control and overwhelming and like I can't step into that. That
Yeah.
seems like insane and terrifying. Like I can't predict this is unknown to me. The more you study it and the more you understand how money flows, the more comfortable you get with it. The more comfortable you get with it, the more willing you are to step into it. So like, there's the learning process and the growing process, and then there's the willingness to step further and further into the river. And
Yeah.
that's honestly the path that I want to take. Like I want to learn how money flows so that I can be a part of the flow, but like I'm not going to just be able to step in and become the flow. Like that's not the first step. So the first step is
Totally.
literally seeing. That's kind of why it's uncomfortable. Like again, the idea of like I need to set this up as an exercise in the morning, because even just trying to imagine all of the parts and components in this desktop computer right here is like it's kind of blowing my mind, and it hurts a little bit.
A
Like there's
computer
the
is,
amount of thinking I have to
yeah.
do. It's big. That's a lot of processing.
Pick a, like I'm looking behind you at the doorway, like the door that's
Mhm.
open. So like there are trim pieces. Like just even take the trim
Extra
pieces,
paint.
the paint that's on them, the can that the paint came in,
The
the
wood saws that cut the trim.
all this is such a fun game. I seriously love this game. You know, like the
It really is, and
hinges.
it really is fun to do with a partner. I'm not gonna lie, because like I
Yeah.
feel like my brain
Yeah.
can get stuck. So like you kind of keep me in the flow of like creatively imagining. Like where are we
Yes.
going? What are we doing?
Right. So yeah, like and then you start to look around and you're like, wow, the paint on the walls, the sheetrock under the paint.
Yeah. So I mean, to anyone listening right now, like highly suggest you pause and just like take a look around you and like do that as a brain exercise. Just like what's around you, right? Like I've got a bunch of books up here. Like, God, what goes into making a book? Like
Yeah.
literally the making of all the things. How much money is exchanging hands? Where is the money exchanging hands that
Yeah.
like creates the things that are surrounding you right now? So
Yeah.
like feel free to pause and like take a second, because it's really interesting and again like overwhelming until you start to see the pieces.
Yeah.
Once you can see, as you mentioned, like the little things, then it gets easier to like build it up into understanding the processing for other things. Like the concept of transport is something that like I hadn't considered, and all of a sudden I'm considering. Like now I'm thinking about the logistics of supply chain. It's like, okay, that's a whole new world I've never even considered before.
Yeah. Somebody got paid to organize the logistics. The driver got paid to get in the truck today. The gas that went in there, the gas station bought that gas, then the company bought the gas, and like the company that even refills the underneath like tanker so that gas comes out of the handle when you pump the gas. Like when you I started doing this a few days ago when I first listened to that episode, and now when you drive down the road, it's like there's just money everywhere. Like every semi you see, it's like what's in there? How much money traded hands for the
Oh,
stock that's in the back of that semi to be there? Who made that semi? What about those tires? What about that tank that holds the gasoline? Like on and on and on and on and on. It is overwhelming. But the
well, and
first step is like
I
you said,
literally
like you got to face the river. You can't like keep it behind you and like get the hang of this.
interestingly, I literally just had to get my car fixed. It was leaking coolant, and had when I went in for an oil change is what I went in for. And they were like, by the way, you have no coolant. And they took me back and they showed me all of the pieces. They're like, this is your component that holds all of the coolant. This is where the coolant should be and where you don't have any. And
It's
this is
not.
the tubing that
Yeah,
leads to, you know, XYZ. Here's this other tubing that it's been dripped onto. Like here, this needs to be replaced, that needs to be replaced. And so like it's really easy to see all of the components when you're getting charged for them, actually, as it turns out, in the context
totally.
of like driving down the road and just seeing, you know, money everywhere.
Yeah.
You can see it too, even when you're being charged for it. Like, look at all these, like, you know, someone had to, like, obviously, the very wonderful guy who was doing my oil change that also happened to look into my leakage and like help me with that. But you know, who made the tubing? You know, how did the
Yeah.
tubing get made? How many other manufacturers were involved? How many other people? How many other, like, it is overwhelming if you start adding in like the context of a car, the amount of components in a car, the amount of manufacturing spaces that go into making all of the components that are needed for the
Yeah.
car, all of the workers that are needed to build the components that get then
Again.
transferred to, you know, via whatever transport also on a vehicle. Like that is the exchange of hand, or the exchange of money, like thinking of components and as an exchange of money is
Yeah.
getting easier even as we talk about it, because like the car thing hadn't occurred to me until you were like driving down the road, and I'm like, actually my car wasn't driving 2 days ago, so like
Yeah.
what a
Yeah.
great point.
Fresh.
there.
Well, and to your point, like definitely starting with smaller items, like your trim boards, like the nails in the trim boards. We didn't even talk about that. Like somebody made the steel, somebody like made the machine that shapes it into a nail. Like some guy got paid to run that machine and pull that lever. And like his supervisor who's like running the whole floor, he got paid to run those employees who were running the machine. Yeah. I mean, to start with like a simpler, like I've got a stop sign that I can see out here, and I think about like the metal of the pole and the metal of the sheet itself and the paint that makes it red and the bolts that are on there and the little lug nut things that are on the back of the bolts and like the guy who got paid to put that there and the company who like starting with like
all
a
the all
smaller
this
item.
paperwork that they have to do. Like I like thinking of inspections, like how much paperwork gets pushed from place to place, or software, electronics. Like somebody got paid to create the software, somebody get paid to test the software,
Yeah,
somebody got paid to like demonstrate the software. Like it's really like the resources even within your own office space
yeah,
are their own money exchange, and that applies no matter what component you're working with. Like there's
yes,
always some level of like resources for the manufacturing plant that we don't even talk about. Like I'm thinking, oh, the people that are making the things and the instruments and or machinery that are helping to make the things, and you don't even, or at least I wasn't even thinking about, you know, all of the resources they need that actually make their plant function. Those are,
right.
that's money exchange.
The lady in the office who is doing accounts receivable, she like opens the mail and takes the checks to the bank. Like she gets paid. Like, I mean, the number of people who are getting paid, it's just, it is mind blowing, overwhelming. And there's no reason to believe in scarcity unless you're just flat out not looking at it. So like I feel like this analogy of like starting to tune in like the x-ray vision, like tune into the money flow, like you will never see the world the same again. Like everything you look at, it's like it just starts being this iceberg of like all the people that got paid so that I could have this shirt sitting on my desk. Like it's a beautiful thing.
It really is. And interesting, like even just in this small period of time that we're talking about it as like a mental exercise, like I
Mhm.
can feel my awareness growing. And so
Yeah.
that's really kind of fun. Like I said, the resources of the machinery company, like would not have thought about that in the beginning, because I would just have, like, I'm looking at what's in front of me and it's hard to see beyond that.
Yeah.
And I think that makes it true for lack too, where it's like you see what's in front of you and you're creating a story around it. You're limiting yourself to this is it. And
Yeah.
like it's not.
Well, and
So
that was
it's
the example that she gave of like the lack-based mentality is like you're looking at the number on your bank statement, or like you log into your online banking and you're looking at the balance of your checking account, and that is where you're looking. You have like this much of a view of abundance, and either the number is as big as you want it to be or it's not. And for a lot of people, it's not. But like this exercise is about like zoom out and look at like all the abundance, like this wallpaper that's behind me, like such a beautiful print, and somebody got paid to design that print. Somebody made the adhesive that's on the back of it. It's a peel and stick wallpaper. Somebody made the little plastic casing that it came in after it was like rolled up. Somebody made the sticker that was on there. Somebody made the ink that printed the sticker. On and on and on, like the light switches and the hooks and the lamp and the little pull chain that turns on my lamp and the light bulb, and like it's
well,
it's
and I
fun.
think
It's a fun little exercise
yeah,
to
it
do.
really is. It really is. And I actually really see it tying into her second exercise as well. So Kate's mention of the second exercise was to stop seeing your debt as like this weight that's hanging on to you, and instead see it as invoices for blessings already received. And
I
I
love it.
love that
Yeah.
thing. Love it. And what makes it really interesting is like even looking at the things around me now, when you can see the money flow, then it becomes, well, this is also something, like this is a blessing that I've already received. This elliptical standing here is a blessing that I've already received. Like the money flowing that made this thing happen is a blessing for me. The computer that's sitting here, same, it is a blessing. So
Yeah.
like in her context, she was talking about, you know, like seeing your debt as essentially things that you have already paid for, blessings you have already received.
Mhm.
And that is like it feels really good to me because now I'm seeing them as blessings.
Yeah,
And so to again to tie into that flow of money, to see that as a blessing as well, like even the door handle walking through the coffee shop, like it is a blessing that I am receiving, that they have transferred money to the extent that I can now walk into a coffee shop and get coffee.
easily.
Like
Yeah.
that is the beauty and value of money flowing, is that
Yes.
I have access to so many things.
Agreed. And the way she reframed that, as far as like, we feel so weighed down by our credit card debt. And I definitely resonate with that. Like, it's so huge
Absolutely.
and it's on and on. But, when you look at it, like, you got the privilege, and it is a privilege, of experiencing those things before you had the money to pay for them. And so, like, that's a blessing. It's a blessing that basically you got it for free back then. Like, you didn't have to pay for it. And now that you've got the credit card bill in front of you, like, now that's catching up. That's your invoice for your blessing already received. So, like, the privilege of even being able to buy things on credit, like, Leanne and I talked about, this has been a while ago now, but like, that it was only like 1974 when, I think it, what is it, like the Equal Credit Opportunity Act or something like that, like
Don't
guaranteed
look
that
at
women in the US, like, they get to apply for credit. They cannot be discriminated against just because they're a woman. And before 1974, it was really up to the discretion of the bank. Some of them would extend credit to a woman, a lot of them would not. And so the fact that like we even have a credit card bill is a fucking blessing. Like, they gave us a credit card. Like, let's start there. Like, we had the option of having credit. They extended that to us. Thank you. Thank you for that.
yeah, so super grateful. And again, like this idea of the credit card usage actually being blessings that I've already received makes me reframe how I use my credit card. Like now all of a sudden I'm thinking about, well, I'm about to make this purchase. When I see it on my credit card statement, am I going to be having the thought that like this is a blessing? I'm grateful to have received it already. Like I am more than happy to pay this bill now
Mhm.
because I am so grateful that I already got to receive this thing. Like how much of a blessing do I feel like this is? Like, do I actually want to pay for it with my credit card? Because, like, I'm kind of envisioning now my credit card statement being a list of blessings. So it's
Right.
like, is this going to be one of the things that I see that I'm like super excited about it? Like, that's what I want. I want to be able to be like, I want this thing so much that I am going to be excited when I see it on my credit card.
Yes. And I love that as far as like reframing how you're spending going forward. And I think it was part of that step where she was like, and do some forgiveness work towards the you who spent the money you didn't have yet. So, like, if there's already things on there that, like, yeah, the you are today would look at that thing and be like, yeah, that definitely wasn't a blessing. Like, I don't even care about that at this point. Like, there's some self-forgiveness that can help to kind of close that gap and just soothe on, like, you did the best you could at that time, and that's okay. That's all we're really ever doing. And so to be easy on ourselves when we're in that situation, but also, like you're saying, like, going forward, is this going to fit into my list of blessings? Or is this something that, like, maybe it's not that important that I have this thing? Because rampant consumerism also fits into this conversation, and like using spending money as like an emotional soothing technique. Like, there's a
That
lot of
is definitely
spending
for me.
that
Yep.
happens
I'm
that, like,
definitely an emotional spender.
a lot of people
And
are.
like,
Totally.
and I do think like being able to forgive yourself for what you have spent. So this was another thing that really came to me when when she was having that conversation um in the other video, was this idea that you want to feel abundant, but like you don't necessarily need to spend as though you are abundant if you don't actually have the money. And I very much, when I feel abundant, spend money as though I'm abundant, and I'm not abundant. Like I don't have that to spend. So like, how much do I actually want it? Is it going to be a blessing for me? And if not, how much of this is just like I'm feeling abundant so I want to spend?
Yeah.
Like I need to reckon that emotional context of like I want to feel good, but the
Yeah.
minute I feel great about my money situation, I'm like, oh well, then I've got money to spend. Like look at that.
Totally.
And it's like Girl, you don't. You
And it's
don't
a
have
yo-yo because now you spend all the money and now you're back into not feeling good about like, oh, now I don't have as much. I mean,
exactly.
I totally get that. I did the same thing with like when I get really excited, my go-to celebration is like champagne or to have a beer or whatever. And like, dude, I mean, you can find something to celebrate pretty much every day if you're like enough of a drinker. So yeah, like is the tactic for like celebrating your emotional high, is it helping you go even higher? You know, whether it's spending or whether it's alcohol or drugs or sex or whatever, like we all have all kinds of things that we're like, oh, I feel so great. And then you do the thing that like is only going to drag you right back down. Like, again, I think
Yeah.
that's so relatable. We all get in that boat a lot of the times.
Well, that really does like that is the experience because this month for me I was really like hoping to break even money wise and I got super excited about that and then spent. And so now I'm no longer actually going to like break even.
Okay.
Which is disappointing, but it makes me wonder like, okay, I was having that experience. I was feeling so abundant. And what happened was I couldn't handle holding on to that feeling of like the abundance. It felt so good, but I couldn't hold it. I
Yeah.
spent and
Yeah.
then the feeling was gone. So like how can I going forward get better at holding that feeling of like feeling so abundant that I have all the money that I could ever need to spend and then not spend it? How
Yeah.
can I hold
Yes. And I think that's a fantastic question. Coco, come on, man. She wanted to be on the
with a
episode.
neighbor?
She said, I will play with you. Um, but no, I think you're exactly right. And, you know, everybody's going to have to go through that exercise like for themselves to find out like what is your celebration tactic that will keep you high or take you higher. And for me, I heard somebody the other day call them millionaire naps. Like, what would you be doing if you were already a millionaire? And I already take a lot of naps just because I'm tired in the middle of the day. But the fact that they called them that, I was like, that's so interesting to celebrate by taking the day off or celebrate by taking an extra long bath or a nap or making yourself like a really healthy dinner, you know, something that will take you even higher and that doesn't necessarily have to cost money, you know, like, but again, I think we all have different ideas around what that can be.
That's really interesting. I'm actually going to have to sit and process that one for a while, I think, too, because it really like I was feeling it touch on like time is money and like my need for productivity as a form of self-worth and how like do I want to reward by myself by giving myself more time or do I earn that time?
Mm,
Like what does it mean for again like self-care and me taking care of myself? Am I giving myself enough time so that that truly does feel like an extra? Like is this like truly a reward of time
yeah.
or am I overproducing and then feeling like I need to treat, you know, like it's a form of like payment. Now I deserve this
Mhm.
time for myself. So like that's a really interesting like dynamic to think about going forward because like I love the idea of having a millionaire nap and I love feeling like I have the time.
Yeah.
I love that. Like
Yeah.
that, you know, that vacation feeling of like, you know, the world is my oyster. Like I have this time to do what I want with and I want to spend it on me. Like that feels really good. And it really is just a question of like how can I make that a balanced experience with my own personal experience of like over productivity and toxic productivity.
It's amazing how once again, like the money conversation, like it'll loop together like everything that we have going on inside of us. Like it's all so interconnected. And this question of how do you celebrate things? You know, that was like a huge piece when I did stop drinking. Like I had to figure out like how the fuck am I gonna like put a exclamation point on the fact that like this was a really exciting day because normally I would splurge for the champagne instead of the six pack, you know, but like I don't do alcohol anymore. So like now what? How do I make today feel special? I feel really good. How do I reinforce that to myself? And to do that in a healthy way is, I mean, that's not on accident by any means.
Yeah, and I'm really thinking about that now. Like, as you were talking about the alcohol, I was thinking about my relationship with food. Like, whenever I feel like, oh, I'm doing really well, I treat myself with the food that I like. That's like generally not the healthiest for me. And I do believe in balance, but like, at what point am I overdoing it? Like, am I
Yeah,
ruining the progress that I've made?
right.
Same is true for money, that it's like I feel so abundant and I feel
I'm
like I
gonna
have done so
spend a
well
bunch.
in taking care of my money. Like, I'm gonna go spend as a
Yeah,
celebration. And
that's not
like I'm
that's not
seeing
great.
that pattern now a little bit more clearly in multiple ways in my life that I'm like, I do need a different way to celebrate. I
Yeah.
need a way that like is going to feel really good and will allow me to like maintain that feeling of I have done so well for myself. I've done such a great thing for myself and like not self-sabotage it.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I was telling you the story the other day of like, I don't resonate with gameplay, but like daily drinking, like that was, it had a hold of me for like 6 years and I was almost free of it. I had like 3 months and then I had one beer and then I went 7 days with like not drinking. And I was like, oh my God, like I had a drink and then I didn't drink for 7 days. I'm going to celebrate by having a beer. And it was like a whole nother year and almost year and a half of like more daily drinking. So like, the ways that we congratulate ourselves and like how do they keep us at that celebratory level? Do they take us up? Do they take us back down to where we were before? It reminds me of like our I think Kathy is the one I heard talk about this, where it's like our receiving frequency, like our capacity to receive, is different than our hold frequency, our capacity to hold that thing once we've received it. Those are like two different set points. And this celebration conversation, I do think, goes more into that, like that hold frequency of like, do you lose 5 pounds and celebrate with a donut? Because that's probably, that's that hold frequency not being very, very well established. Like if you're dragging yourself back down to like where you were before. Let me celebrate not drinking by having a beer. Like, great. That's not a very
Well, and
good
it
sign.
really like this conversation for me puts into perspective, the lottery winners and their
Exactly.
inability to hold. And I
Exactly.
honestly like I understood it at a contextual level, like a very thoughtful understanding, but I'm seeing the pattern in my life in a way now that I'm seeing how I'm not holding, how I'm not capable of holding. And so like I could easily, like I keep thinking I would never be one of those lottery winners who like spent all of their stuff. And like now I'm looking, I'm like, actually I could be one of those lottery winners
Yeah.
who
Most
absolutely
people would
spent all of
be.
their money.
I feel like
And
almost
like
everyone would be one of them.
right. And you just like I never thought that I would be that person. And now looking at my pattern, I'm like, actually, I would be that person. I would overspend. I like it. I'm even like mentally not just imagining where all of that money would go. Like, as a matter of fact, yeah,
Yeah,
I could spend several million dollars. So
totally.
how do I learn to hold several million dollars and just be excited that I have this and like not go throwing it everywhere?
Right. And like we've talked about, you and I, of like we both built up very respectable savings accounts. So it's not like our hold frequency is nothing. Like we have a decent hold frequency. And if we got millions of dollars dropped on us, it would not feel safe to our nervous system because our hold frequency is down here. And now we're like having abundance up here.
And that's actually really interesting because I don't know that I would have identified it as my hold frequency because I was always feeling like I didn't have enough. So I was in a mental space of lack. I was building my savings feeling like I didn't have enough and like I need more and so therefore I must save more. I never spent on hardly anything because I was like, I don't have the money for it. And now I'm finding that when I feel like I do have money, I overspend. So, like, that has been true and actually depleted my savings quite a bit too, because every time I looked at my savings, like, I have the money, it's okay, I overspend.
Yeah.
And so, like, now that I'm getting into this feeling of like, what does it feel like to have enough? I don't know how to hold enough.
Mm.
Like, that's a fascinating
Which,
new edge to be on.
dude, I gotta give you a little bit of credit because there was a chick at my old job at the software company, and she had been at that job for 10 years, and she was telling me how she freaking hates it and like doesn't want to be here and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, why don't you just quit? And she's like, girl, you don't even understand. I am like $50,000 in debt on my credit cards, no money in the bank, making easily 130 grand a year. And what does she have to show for it? Is no money in her checking, no savings account. and $50,000 on her credit cards. So like, do you have a hold frequency or not? Because holy shit, like the fact that you can save anything, any amount of savings is a signal that like, okay, like you do have a basis of being able to hold that. And I mean, there are some people who like, my mom was telling me this story of a girl that works at the store with her of like, she was like super excited because she got her final paycheck from her job before and it was $500. And 3 days later, she had nothing. She had nails, she got her hair dyed, she got like this outfit and that's it. And like a week later, the nails are gone. You know, the hair is going to grow out. Like a month or two from now, that won't be anything. And her $500 is just history. And so that to
I
me is like a zero hold frequency. You know what I
I
mean?
feel like this really ties into it was another Kate Northrup conversation, another thing that she mentioned, which is like she said that the best solution for people who are in debt, excessively in debt, is to work on building up 2 months of
Yes.
living expenses and pay the minimums on your credit card. And like that resonated with me too, because I'm very much someone who's like, I have extra money, it must go immediately to my credit card. And her response was, no, actually,
Don't do
what
that.
you want to do is build up your own abundance so that you're feeling abundant and so that you know that you can handle if any emergencies come up, and then start feeding into paying down your debt. So the
Mhm.
idea that like, well, I know I have this money, I know I have 2 months saved, now feels really good and feels really abundant, and you can operate from that feeling of abundance and it gets easier. You move better in life. Like
Yeah.
I absolutely resonate with like that feeling of abundance. When you feel like you have abundance, like you feel better. Like I would
Yes.
feel better knowing I had 2 months in my bank account.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, like I said, I'm very much someone who's like, I'm trying to pay down my debt. So it's like at this point, like credit cards is the first place my money goes. And I'm looking at my strategy and rethinking that too, thinking maybe, all right, like that makes sense. I want to make sure that I'm building up my own savings. And maybe that just means that I'm paying minimums on credit cards until I do that. So like,
Yes.
what's your strategy? Is it building you towards a good feeling? Because like obviously a good feeling is like paying down the debt, but how long is that going to take? Like in the
Correct.
immediacy of like being abundant now, how can you feel more abundant now? And like if the answer is I need to put more into my savings, then maybe you need to put more into your savings. And I feel
Yeah.
like that's probably where I'm at personally. It's
Yeah.
like how am I going to build my abundance?
There's one more piece from that conversation that I think was like much later into it, but it goes back to this idea of like kind of letting yourself off the hook for spending money that you don't have. She tells a story of a friend of hers that went to medical school and racked up, I forget if she said 700,000 or 900,000 worth of student loans. And like that's what's called investment debt, that like you invested that money and like you needed that debt so that you could like leverage yourself into a new position in life. Like he became a surgeon of some sort and like is able to pay back that loan and then a lot more than that. And so when you think about spending money you don't have, it's not always a bad idea. Like sometimes it's a really good idea if that spend is going to be an investment, is going to help you to be able to pay it back and then some. It may be worth it to pay the 15% interest rate or whatever crazy number your credit card is charging in order to have the skills and the knowledge and the value that you spent that money on, and then use those skills to put yourself in a position where you can pay it back and create a new revenue stream for yourself. So that's another way to look at like when you're going to spend, is it a blessing that I'm going to be grateful for later, or is it an investment that's going to help me to get to my next level? Like those are very valid things. Like debt, again, it's a blessing. The fact that you can spend money that you don't have to like elevate your position in life, that's something to be grateful for. But yeah, just spending and spending and spending and spending and like not doing it on purpose, like that's a hole that at some point you got to be like, just stop digging. Like the first step of paying off my credit card
Yeah.
was like cut it in half. Like you don't get to run this credit card ever again. And I took all my automatic payments and put them on my debit card, like my Netflix and like everything, like take it off the credit card. Like, don't add to the balance. Stop doing that. And I did that for like a year. And then I started like really focusing on like, okay, how am I going to pay this down? And so like
Yes.
sometimes when you find yourself in a hole, the best thing you can do is just stop digging, stop doing that. And that's a step
It's so
all
true.
by itself.
I similar to you, I didn't cut up my credit card, but I switched over to a cash budget.
Mm,
And that was a like seeing the money exchange that way and seeing how much I had left over. That was a really like that was awareness at its finest for me. And I had always wanted to do a cash budget to try it out, and it's annoying. So I won't say that it's like my favorite thing, but it made me so much more aware of where my money was going and how much things cost. Like I was in the grocery store mentally adding up how much it was going to be at the register. How close am I? Like that
yeah.
was the game that I was playing. Like, okay, I think I was going to spend this much. How much am I actually spending? Like, how much did I pay attention? Because it's so easy for me to like, I'll go into the grocery store with the intention of like mentally tallying, and within 5 items I've like lost the tally and I'm not paying attention anymore.
Yeah.
So like how long can I hold the awareness of what things cost, and how long can I be paying attention to the money that's around me, the money that I'm about to spend, what things are
Yeah.
worth? Like
Yeah.
that is valuable knowledge, and I don't generally hold on to it. It's something that's really difficult for me to like keep my focus, and I think that's just another part of this money journey for me. Is like, the seeing, learning how to see things flow, learning how to see money flow from one space to another. Like it's true in the grocery store as much as anywhere else, that like seeing your own money flow is also something to pay attention to, even in the moment of, like I said, grocery shopping or shopping in general. If you're in a store, like tally up what you think you're going to owe, try and predict what tax is going to be. Like that's all valuable knowledge. It's all exercises in growing your money experience.
Mm, yeah. Stepping into an empowered place when it comes to the overwhelming abundance that is available to us in this lifetime. The one more thing that she said is money loves safety. Money loves security, predictability, safety. Like money loves that. And so for us to be a match to money, like we need to be a safe place, like a safe harbor for money to come into. And so just so much food for thought on that episode. I would love to hear in the comments, like if you guys do go check it out, like what really resonated for you. Maybe we come back on another one of these and like dive into it even more. I feel like she said so many things on that episode that were like so good to spend some time with as we heal our relationship to money. That is such a process. And thank you, Leigh Anne, as always. I say it every time, but like, thank you for being in this with me. Doing it with a
Thank
partner
you.
makes it
Yeah.
be that much more approachable. And thank you for anybody who's watching and commenting and liking and being a part of this with us as well. Your questions like definitely add fuel to the fire for us to continue this process and to continue sharing about it here. So thanks everybody. Everybody gets a thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Oh, I think we'll call that good.